Forgiveness is a word I haven't wasted on my parents in 7 years. Not since they weighed Chloe's $74,000 life-saving treatment against a $210,000 debutante ball for my sister and found my dying daughter wanting. Every precise calculation I make as an accountant now is a quiet counterpoint to their monstrous arithmetic, a chilling reminder that some betrayals are simply unforgivable. And this particular debt, I will never settle. The precision Elara applied to her spreadsheets was a fortress. Each cell, each meticulously calculated figure, a bulwark against the chaos that had once consumed her world. At 27, a senior accountant in Austin, Texas, her life was a testament to control, an unwavering refusal to be swayed by emotion, a lesson she'd learned the hardest way imaginable. 5 years had passed since the day Chloe, her 2-year-old daughter, had slipped away, her small body finally succumbing to a rare genetic disorder that demanded a future Elara's parents, Alastair and Eleanor Ashworth, had deemed an uncertain investment. The memory still burned, a phantom limb of agony. 22 years old, desperate, Elara had stood before them, tears blurring her vision, clutching the medical reports detailing an experimental treatment. $74,000. A sum that felt insurmountable to her, but a mere fraction of the Ashworths' sprawling wealth. They had listened, impassive, their eyes holding that familiar, chilling blend of concern and calculated disinterest. "We have other obligations," Elara, her mother, Eleanor, had said, her voice a soft, silken dismissal. "And this isn't guaranteed." Alastair had merely nodded, his gaze already drifting towards the ornate grandfather clock in the foyer, a clear sign the conversation was concluded. The unspoken message: a sick grandchild was a liability, not a priority. 8 months later, that precise sum, $74,000, had been annihilated by a new number, an obscene $210,000. That was the cost of Seraphina's debutante ball, a glittering spectacle for Elara's younger sister, an event meticulously crafted to solidify the Ashworths' social standing. Each pearl on Seraphina's gown, each crystal in the ballroom chandelier, represented a breath Chloe might have taken, a giggle Elara might have heard. The disparity had not just shattered Elara, it had cauterized her, transforming soft grief into a hard, unyielding stone. She had cut them off, severed every tie, burying the howling void of her grief beneath mountains of work and the relentless, methodical task of paying off Chloe's crushing medical debts, every dollar a quiet act of defiance against their casual cruelty. Just last week, the carefully constructed silence had been breached. A text unsolicited from an old college friend: "Heard about your parents, Elara. Rough. You doing okay?" The vagueness was a blessing, but the implication was clear. The Ashworths were still weaving their narratives, still attempting to control the perception of their fractured family. Then the call, a sugar-coated missile from Eleanor's friend, Carol. "Your mother's been so worried, dear. Alastair isn't well. She just wants to talk." The words, dripping with feigned concern, only solidified Elara's cold fury. This wasn't reconciliation. It was an attempt to manage their own guilt, to drag her back into their charade of a perfect life. But Elara had found her own path, her own victories. Her spreadsheets were not just fortresses, they were blueprints for a new future. Her meticulous attention to detail, her unwavering focus, had not gone unnoticed. Just yesterday, the managing partner had called her into his office, a rare, almost celebratory, expression on his face. "Elara, your work on the Sterling Group merger was exceptional. We're promoting you to director. Effective immediately." A small, vital victory in a life defined by immense loss. It was a private triumph, unsullied by their influence, a testament to her own strength. It was not forgiveness, nor was it solace, but it was a quiet, potent affirmation that she was more than the daughter they had betrayed. She was a force, precise and unyielding, forging her own legacy, brick by calculated brick. Months blurred into a rhythm Elara had meticulously constructed: work, gym, carefully planned meals, and the quiet solitude of her evenings. The sharp edges of grief had not dulled, but they had been contained, filed down by routine and relentless focus. Her promotion, a testament to her unwavering competence, offered a veneer of vindication, a small, cold comfort. Then, the illusion of control shattered. Alastair and Eleanor Ashworth, her parents, materialized in the gleaming lobby of her corporate building, an anachronism of polished entitlement against the minimalist glass and steel. Security called, their voices a practiced blend of deference and confusion. "Miss Ashworth, there are two individuals claiming to be your parents." Elara's breath hitched, but her voice remained level, devoid of any warmth. "Escort them out. They are not to be permitted access to my office or any floor of this building. Under no circumstances." Her finger hovered over the intercom, a phantom weight ready to sever the connection, just as she had severed them from her life. She watched the security footage flicker on her screen, her mother, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, clutching a large envelope, her father, Alastair, looking paler, a slight tremor in his hand as he gestured impatiently at the guard. The sight sparked not recognition, but a chilling detachment. These were not her parents. They were ghosts of a life she had forcibly abandoned. Minutes later, a junior assistant hesitantly placed the envelope on Elara's desk. "Your mother insisted, Ms. Ashworth. She said it was urgent." Elara dismissed the assistant with a curt nod, her gaze fixed on the elegant script, for Elara. The familiar calligraphy, once associated with birthday cards and holiday greetings, now felt like a venomous sigil. Inside, Eleanor's sprawling, 7-page letter unfolded, a tapestry of carefully woven excuses and veiled appeals. It began with an effusive, almost theatrical apology for their past misjudgment, framed as fear and overwhelming selfishness in the face of Chloe's complex medical needs. She detailed Alastair's recent minor stroke, attributing his poor decision-making during that period to stress and declining health. Her own anxiety, she wrote, had been crippling, leading to a mental fog. Then came the subtle, manipulative hooks, mentions of Seraphina's upcoming wedding, how much they missed Elara, how life wasn't the same without her, how they dreamt of holding their grandchild, a grandchild whose life they had actively chosen not to save. It was an insidious narrative, crafted to elicit pity and absolution, a transparent attempt to manage their own festering guilt without taking true, uncompromising accountability. Elara read it twice, each word fueling a cold, righteous fury that burned beneath her composed exterior. It wasn't an apology, it was a demand for her to absolve them, to rewrite their history into a less monstrous tale. The paper, heavy and expensive, felt like a prop in their ongoing charade. A week later, the doorbell to Elara's modest Austin apartment chimed persistently. She rarely had visitors. Peering through the peephole, her heart gave a jolt. Seraphina. Her younger sister, radiant and slightly bewildered, stood on her doorstep, a delicate white floral dress billowing around her. She looked precisely as Elara remembered her from the debutante ball photos, a gilded cage personified. Elara opened the door, her expression unreadable. Seraphina, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and trepidation, burst out, "Elara. Oh my God, I finally found you. I had to hire a private investigator. They wouldn't tell me where you were." There was a genuine plea in her voice, a desperation that softened Elara's ironclad resolve just a fraction. Seraphina had always been shielded, a delicate hothouse flower carefully pruned by their parents. She had been a victim of their lies and manipulations, too, albeit one who benefited from them. "Seraphina," Elara said, her voice flat. "What do you want?" "The wedding." "My wedding is in 2 months," Seraphina exclaimed, her hands clasped together. "Mom and Dad are a wreck. Everyone is. Please, just come. We can talk, we can fix this. It's just normal family stuff, isn't it? Every family has arguments." Her eyes searched Elara's face, begging for an easy answer, a simple resolution. The sheer naivete of it was stunning, almost heartbreaking. Normal family stuff. As if a choice between a dying child and a social spectacle could ever be categorized as normal family stuff. In that moment, Elara knew. She saw the girl standing before her, not as an accomplice, but as another casualty of their parents' toxic priorities. The truth, raw and unvarnished, had to be laid bare. Seraphina deserved to know the true cost of her parents' love, the depths of their betrayal, and the foundation of lies upon which her sheltered life had been built. It wouldn't be easy, but it was essential. She stepped aside, a silent invitation. "Come in, Seraphina. We need to talk." And it's anything but normal family stuff. The words, though quiet, carried the weight of 7 years of unexpressed pain and a decade of unforgivable debt. The air in Elara's modest living room crackled with an unspoken history as Seraphina, pale and trembling, absorbed the devastating truth. Each word Elara uttered, about Chloe's failing health, the desperate plea for $74,000, their parents' glacial refusal, and the obscene contrast of the $210,000 debutante ball, chipped away at the meticulously polished facade of her privileged life. Seraphina's carefully constructed reality, built on the bedrock of parental love and familial harmony, didn't just crumble, it exploded into a shower of poisoned glass shards. Her face crumpled, not in simple sadness, but in a profound, gut-wrenching shame. Tears streamed down her cheeks, a torrent of belated grief and crushing guilt for a sister she barely remembered and a suffering she had unknowingly benefited from. It can't be true," Seraphina choked out, her voice barely a whisper, a desperate attempt to reconstruct her shattered world. "Mom and Dad, they wouldn't. They love us. They always said." Elara watched her sister, a ghost of the girl she once knew, now reduced to a weeping child. There was no triumph in her gaze, only a cold, analytical observation. "They said what they needed to say to maintain their image, Seraphina. To protect their investments. To sleep at night. They chose opulence over life. They chose a party over their own grandchild. That is their character. That is the truth." Her voice was devoid of malice towards Seraphina, but it carried an unyielding resolve that brooked no argument. "I understand this is a lot to process. You were a child, a pawn in their game, as much as I was a discarded, inconvenient truth. But do not mistake my understanding for forgiveness. Do not mistake it for a desire to forget or to pretend we are a happy family. We are not. We never will be." Seraphina spent the next hour in a haze of tears and fragmented questions, slowly piecing together the horrifying mosaic of her parents' deception. She called her fiancé, her voice thick with a pain he struggled to comprehend, explaining that everything she thought she knew was a lie. The next day, fortified by a righteous fury that surprised even herself, Seraphina confronted Alistair and Eleanor. The opulent living room, usually a stage for their carefully curated lives, became a battlefield. Alistair, already diminished by his recent stroke, initially tried to wave away Seraphina's accusations as Elara's bitterness, a misunderstanding. Eleanor, her face a mask of practiced distress, echoed his sentiments, painting Elara as the unstable, unforgiving daughter. But Seraphina, armed with Elara's stark truths and her own dawning realization, stood firm. She recounted Elara's words, every detail of Chloe's illness, the requested amount, the cold refusal, the exact figure of her debutante ball. The sheer, undeniable weight of the facts, presented by their beloved, perfect daughter, finally broke them. Their denials crumbled, replaced by a desperate, ugly confession, punctuated by sobs and pleas for Seraphina to understand, to forgive. Alistair clutched his chest, his face ashen, another wave of guilt-induced sickness washing over him. "Understand." Seraphina's voice was sharp, cutting through their self-pity. "I understand that my entire childhood was a lie, built on the grave of my niece. I understand that you are monsters beneath the tailored suits and designer dresses. The wedding will proceed," she stated, her voice trembling but firm. "But our relationship, whatever fragile thing it was, is fundamentally and permanently altered. Do not expect me to forget. Do not expect me to forgive. Not for this." Meanwhile, miles away, Elara felt a grim satisfaction. She hadn't been there to witness the scene, but Seraphina's tearful, yet resolute, phone call had painted a vivid enough picture. It was a victory, but a hollow one, a step towards accountability, not closure. Her work wasn't finished. Elara turned her attention to her next strategic move, a meticulously crafted gift for the Ashworths. She found a custom bookbinder, a small artisan studio, and commissioned a bespoke photo album. Inside, she carefully placed every photograph she possessed of Chloe, from the joyous day of her birth, through her first steps, her innocent smiles, up to the poignant, heartbreaking images taken in her final hospital days. The final page, deliberately stark, would bear a single, chilling inscription: $74,000 to save her life. $210,000 for a debutante ball. Some choices reveal character. It was not an act of revenge born of rage, but of calculated, surgical precision, designed to deliver an unforgettable blow of unvarnished truth. A week before Seraphina's wedding, a discreet, plain package arrived at the Ashworth sprawling estate. It sat, innocuous, on Eleanor's polished mahogany desk amidst invitations and thank-you notes. She'd assumed it was another pre-wedding gift, perhaps an early delivery for Seraphina. When she slit the tape with a silver letter opener, the weight in her hands felt unexpectedly significant. Inside, nestled in black tissue, was a bespoke leather-bound album, starkly elegant. Her heart gave a curious lurch as she saw the familiar script on the cover, Chloe Grace. The words burned, etching themselves onto his soul. He pictured the glittering ballroom, Seraphina's radiant smile, the clinking champagne flutes, all funded by the lifeblood they had withheld. It wasn't a memory, it was a searing indictment. He dropped onto the sofa beside Eleanor, his face contorted with a grief that felt too late, too shallow, yet utterly overwhelming. They spent the rest of the day in a shared, silent agony, the album a physical manifestation of their unforgivable sin. Elara, miles away, felt a cold, deep satisfaction. Justice, she thought, was not always swift, but it could be exquisitely precise. Their suffering, finally, felt earned. 2 days later, Elara's phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, but something in her gut urged her to answer. Elara. Seraphina's voice, usually bright and melodic, was raw, strained, thick with unshed tears. It's Seraphina. The album arrived. Elara remained silent, her expression unreadable. She let the weight of the moment hang. I saw it, Seraphina continued, her voice breaking. Everything. The dates, the money. God, Elara. How could they? How could we? I don't know what to say. I feel sick. You were a child, Seraphina, Elara said, her tone level, devoid of either warmth or accusation. You didn't know. But I benefited, Seraphina choked out. From her death. From their monstrous choice. My party. Elara, I can't look at any of this the same way again. My entire life feels like a lie. She took a shaky breath. Thank you. For showing me. For not letting me marry into a family built on such a foundation of lies. It hurts beyond words, but I need this truth. I need it. Elara allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible nod, though Seraphina couldn't see it. You're welcome. The wedding. I'm still going through with it, Seraphina said, a fragile determination in her voice. But it will be my truth. Not theirs. Not their facade. I've told Liam everything. He's amazing. He's with me. And Mom and Dad, they're destroyed. They haven't stopped crying. I don't think they've eaten. They just sit there, staring at those pictures. A faint flicker of something akin to grim satisfaction touched Elara. Good. Elara, will you be there? Seraphina asked, a desperate hope in her voice. No, Elara replied, the answer firm and immediate. My presence would be a lie, Seraphina. A pretense. I cannot offer them that comfort. Nor would I disrespect Chloe's memory by participating in their charade of family unity. Seraphina sighed, a sound of profound understanding and sorrow. I understand. I really do. Thank you, Elara. For everything. The call ended. The day of Seraphina's wedding, Elara woke early, not to a frantic rush, but to a profound sense of quietude. There was no internal debate. no lingering doubt about her decision. Her absence was not an act of spite, but of self-preservation, a firm boundary against a world she had consciously rejected. While the Ashworth estate buzzed with a hollow festivity, she took a long, solitary walk through an Austin park, the crisp morning air a cleansing balm. Her phone remained silent, her focus squarely on the intricate financial models spread across her laptop later that afternoon. Work had become her sanctuary, her relentless pursuit of professional excellence a testament to her unyielding will. She found a deep, unshakable peace in her deliberate exile, a calm born from integrity and an unwavering commitment to her truth. The distant sounds of a world celebrating what she refused to acknowledge faded into the background, irrelevant. A few months later, as the vibrant Texas autumn gave way to a cooler winter, a formal letter arrived at Elara's apartment. It was from Alastair and Eleanor's long-standing legal firm, Ashworth and Associates. The content was precise, sterile, and entirely predictable. Alastair Ashworth, due to his declining health, had significantly updated his will. Elara, to her non-surprise, was named as a principal beneficiary, slated to inherit a sum exceeding $2 million, alongside a significant portion of the family's investment portfolio. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, requested a meeting to discuss the details. Elara read the letter once, then a second time, a wry, almost bitter smile touching her lips. Absolution, posthumous style, she murmured to the empty room. It was their default setting: throw money at a problem until it went away. They hadn't learned, couldn't learn. This wasn't genuine remorse. It was a desperate, transparent attempt to buy a clean conscience, to assuage the gnawing guilt that the photo album had unleashed. A final, pathetic effort to rewrite the narrative of their monstrous choice, to retrospectively appear generous, caring, even loving. It was a transaction, pure and simple. She called Mr. Davies back the same day. Her voice, as always, was calm, articulate, and utterly devoid of emotion. Mr. Davies, regarding the updated will and my inclusion as a beneficiary, she began, not bothering with pleasantries. I must unequivocally refuse. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Ms. Ashworth, I'm afraid I don't quite follow. This is a substantial sum, a gesture of profound reconciliation. It is not reconciliation, Mr. Davies. Elara cut him off, her tone sharpened by an edge of steel. It is an attempt to buy forgiveness, to whitewash their past with wealth. Something they have done countless times before. I will not be a part of it. But Ms. Ashworth, your father is very ill. This is his final wish, to provide for you. My final wish, Mr. Davies, is to be entirely removed from that will, Elara stated, her voice hardening. I want absolutely nothing from them. Furthermore, any share designated for me is to be legally transferred to Seraphina Ashworth. Ensure it is explicitly stipulated. I will sign any necessary waivers, but my name and any claim to their tainted wealth must be expunged. Are you quite certain, Ms. Ashworth? He asked, clearly bewildered by such an extraordinary refusal. Absolutely, she affirmed. Their money represents their choices. And I choose a life free of them, and free of their guilt-ridden generosity. Consider this my final word on the matter. She hung up, a profound sense of clarity settling over her. They believed they could buy their way out of anything, even the profound moral debt they owed Chloe. But Elara knew better. Some debts could never be settled with money. Some betrayals were simply unforgivable, and no amount of posthumous charity could erase the stain. Her refusal was not just a rejection of money, it was a rejection of their entire corrupt value system. It was her continuing declaration that their past was not for sale, and her peace was not negotiable. Elara met Seraphina in a quiet cafe, the clatter of porcelain and hushed conversations a stark contrast to the earthquake that had recently leveled their family's foundation. Seraphina, still raw from the wedding and her confrontation with their parents, listened intently as Elara laid out her proposal. The inheritance, Elara began, her voice steady and devoid of emotion. It's blood money, isn't it? Alastair's final, desperate attempt to buy peace. But it doesn't have to be just that. She explained her vision for the Chloe Grace Memorial Fund, a nonprofit designed to bridge the chasm between life-saving experimental treatments and the families who couldn't afford them. Seraphina's eyes, wide with a newfound understanding of suffering, welled up. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Elara. This is what Chloe would have wanted. It's what we should have done. And I'll make sure they know, Elara. I'll make sure they know their guilt money is finally saving the lives they so selfishly refuse to save." The unspoken weight of their parents' choices hung between them, now slowly transforming into a shared purpose, a quiet, potent act of defiance. Years blurred into a decade. Elara's professional star continued its relentless ascent. Her promotion to director was merely another rung on a ladder she'd built with precision and unyielding focus, a life forged entirely without the Ashworth's tainted influence. Her work, her integrity, her quiet contributions to the burgeoning fund, now a beacon of hope for countless families, had become her truest self. Seraphina, too, had blossomed, dedicating herself to the Chloe Grace Memorial Fund, channeling her own pain and guilt into a force for good. They maintained a cautious, respectful bond, a sisterhood born of shared trauma and an unwavering commitment to truth. Then came the call. Alistair's health had taken another turn. A series of mini-strokes had ravaged him, leaving him confined to a wheelchair, his once imposing frame withered. Eleanor, her veneer of social grace long since cracked, sounded genuinely desperate, not for reconciliation, but for a final word, a final plea. Elara agreed, not out of any lingering affection, but for clarity, for closure on her terms. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room, neutral territory provided by a family lawyer who looked profoundly uncomfortable. Alistair, gaunt and trembling, his eyes clouded with a lifetime of unspoken regret, struggled to lift a hand. Eleanor, her face etched with exhaustion and unshed tears, reached across the polished table, her voice trembling. "Elara," she began, the word a desperate plea. "Please, we know we failed you. We know we made a terrible mistake. But we've paid for it, haven't we? The guilt. It's been a constant torment. Please, my daughter, find it in your heart to forgive us. We're old. We're tired. We just want peace." Elara looked at them, her gaze steady and unyielding. The room was silent save for Alistair's ragged breathing. "Forgiveness," she stated, her voice calm, cold, and utterly devoid of warmth, "is not mine to give. It's not a commodity you can earn through belated regret or illness. Forgiveness implies understanding, a true comprehension of the depth of your betrayal, and a fundamental shift in the character flaws that led to it. But all I've heard for years are excuses. Fear. Other obligations. Uncertain investment. Even now, you speak of your torment, your peace. Never Chloe's. Never mine." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes piercing. "Your character flaws, valuing appearance over life, finances over family, were not an isolated mistake. They're who you are. And they're unchangeable. What happened to Chloe was a consequence of those flaws. What happened to our relationship is a permanent consequence. There is no going back, no absolution, and no rewriting history. My peace comes from accountability, from building a life of integrity, not from offering you solace you haven't earned. This isn't anger. This is clarity. And it is final." Elara pushed back her chair, the scrape a harsh punctuation in the otherwise silent conference room. She didn't look back, the cold certainty in her veins more satisfying than any manufactured warmth. Justice wasn't a feeling, it was a structure built brick by unforgiving brick. Her parents, left in the stark, sterile space, were diminished, their pleas echoing futilely against the walls of her resolve. Weeks later, a call came. Alistair, after another stroke, was gone. The doctors attributed it to complications, but Elara knew the truth, the relentless gnawing of his own conscience, finally manifesting. There was no grief, only a quiet acknowledgement of an inevitable end. His death brought no absolution, merely the quiet closing of a chapter that should have ended years ago. Eleanor, however, could not bear the silence left by his passing or the weight of her daughter's unforgiveness. Consumed by guilt and an anxiety that had become a physical tremor, she voluntarily admitted herself to a private psychiatric facility. Elara received the news with a detached clinical interest, observing the unfolding consequences of a life unexamined. That night, Elara wrote the final letter. Not to reconcile, but to define, with precise, unassailable clarity, the boundaries of their existence. Mother, I am writing to you not in anger, but in the peace I have meticulously built for myself, a peace you can never touch. Your desperate pleas for forgiveness were not about me. They were about easing your own burden, an attempt to cleanse a stain you believe absolution can erase. But I am not your confessor, nor your path to salvation. Forgiveness is a gift freely given, earned through true remorse and genuine change, not demanded from a place of continued self-delusion and convenient regret. You and father chose appearances over life, social standing over a dying child. That choice, raw and unforgivable, resides not in my heart to pardon, but in your own to bear. My peace comes from building a life of integrity, from honoring Chloe's memory by demanding accountability, not from offering you the solace you haven't earned. Consider this my final word. Our relationship, or what was left of it, is irrevocably severed. Some bridges, once burned, cannot and should not be rebuilt. The letter was mailed without a moment's hesitation. Months turned into a year. Word eventually filtered back that Eleanor, through the haze of her own suffering, had finally accepted the harsh truth. It was a different kind of peace she found, not the gentle balm of forgiveness, but the stark clarity of understanding that some wounds are eternal, some consequences absolute. She died quietly in the facility, her passing marked by the same public platitudes as Alistair's, eulogies praising their contributions to society, utterly ignorant of the private failures that had hollowed out their final years. Meanwhile, the Chloe Grace Memorial Fund officially launched. Seraphina, now its impassioned executive director, spearheaded its mission with fierce dedication. The Ashworths' guilt money, once a symbol of their callous disregard, was transformed, saving lives, funding experimental treatments for families desperate for hope. It was a powerful, ironic legacy. Elara, now a director in her own right, her financial stability a testament to her unwavering drive, stood by Chloe's small grave on what would have been her 10th birthday. The grief was a dull throb, a constant companion, but it was tempered by a profound peace. Her ultimate revenge wasn't destruction, but construction, a life lived well, defined by integrity, demanding consequences without offering solace. She had survived, thrived, and from the ashes of betrayal, forged a legacy that would echo with kindness, a sharp contrast to the cold calculation of her parents.